But now, once again, to the war in the Middle East, which looks set to continue despite the death of the Hamas leader, and to a new level of horror for civilians, and a warning, distressing content. This video on Instagram shows the aftermath of an Israeli airstrike last Sunday on the Al-Aqsa hospital in Gaza, which set fire to tents in the courtyard housing the sick and displaced. If you turn up the sound, you can hear the screams. And what you see here is a man's hands held aloft as he is burnt alive. Their owner was 19-year-old Shaban al-Dalu, who died in the fire alongside his mother, as Sky UK reported.
In a different place, in a different time, Shaban would have had a bright future ahead of him. But Shaban was born in Gaza, where people now measure their futures in hours and days.
And the reported reason for the airstrike?
The Israeli military said it targeted militants hiding out among the displaced, without providing evidence to support its claim.
So, how has the media reacted? Here is UK Talkback host James O'Brien holding back tears as he says,
the question of why Israel keeps foreign journalists out of Gaza is probably answered by the events that I'm about to relay to you. Some of the footage appears to show people burning alive while attached to IV drips. This is 2024. This is the 21st century. This is an ally.
The image of those arms, rigid in the fire, may come to define this war. But O'Brien's comment also reveals something about the way the media has been cowed, because he tells his listeners the footage appears to show people burning alive, which is crazy, because there is no doubt. But it just shows the power of Israel's narrative that Palestinian sources can't be trusted, whether it's with casualty figures, the personal tragedies of Palestinian families, the accounts of doctors and health workers, or the testimony of aid organisations like Oxfam, which is why the media continually says it is claimed or it is reported, and is expected to prove the claims are true, with France 24 feeling it necessary to devote nearly 5 minutes to that task on this occasion, noting,
some pro-Israeli accounts are claiming that these videos have been staged and claims that are still gaining traction online.
But perhaps this narrative may now be about to change, because Israel's attack on Lebanon means Western news agencies and TV networks now have their own reporters in the war zone, bringing us powerful eyewitness accounts, like this one from Nine's Matthew Knott and Kate Geraghty from Beirut last Monday on an Israeli airstrike targeting a senior Hezbollah figure.
Ali was watching the war on TV. Then a bomb fell.
Suddenly, an explosion erupted and their apartment walls began shaking. The blast sent his wife flying through air before slamming her into the ground. 22 people died in the strikes and 117 were injured.
It is strong stuff from journalists you know and trust, which is hard to spin and impossible to contradict. And Channel 4's Lindsay Hilsum was also on the scene to drive it home.
This is what we found out when we went down to the site of one of the biggest bombs that has fallen on Beirut this morning.
In this place, in the moments before, what were people doing? Eating dinner, watching TV, putting the children to bed. Now their neighbours look on in shock.
A second report from Nine's Matthew Knott and Kate Geraghty on an Israeli airstrike in a Christian village in northern Lebanon, again apparently targeting a lone Hezbollah official, was just as strong. And once again, TV reporters were on hand as Red Cross workers picked through the ruins of a home that had sheltered a family of Shia refugees. And another warning, this report contains distressing vision.
The weapons being used in these strikes are so powerful that they pulverise not just buildings, but the human bodies inside. These paramedics are digging through the rubble, taking out human body parts. We just saw a charred human foot taken out and placed alone into a body bag.
This is all their relatives have left to bury. But there aren't many members of the family left. 23 of the 29 people who sought refuge here were killed. The other 6 are in hospital in critical condition. Nearly an entire family line wiped out in a moment.
Leila Molana-Allen has spent months covering the Gaza war for America's PBS NewsHour. And in an interview with Media Watch, she said, seeing the conflict firsthand makes all the difference.
Being there in that environment is everything. I'm watching the body parts of children being picked out of the rubble, flesh scattered everywhere, burning flesh out of rubble. The smell is something you will never forget. And trying to communicate that to an audience to make them understand that this is not a video game. These are lives, they are homes, they are the bodies that you hold and hug every day being ripped apart. I think that is so important because that's what war is.
As we know well, first-hand reports have not been possible from Gaza in the last 12 months, or not from Western journalists, because Israel has stopped them going there. So for Australians who rely on the mainstream media, it's been easy to turn away from what is going on.
And it's incomprehensible to me that for a year, journalists have not been allowed to go and report on the bloodiest conflict in the world. And we've just accepted that. We've just accepted that. And if the Fifth Estate isn't there holding people to account for what they're doing, that's it, really. Everything goes out of the window, right? Human rights go out of the window, international law goes out of the window, because there's no way to hold anyone to account. So we have to put ourselves in that position and fight all we can to get there and see it firsthand.
But while Western reporters are now in Lebanon, they're not entirely free to report there either. Around 1/3 of the country is covered by IDF evacuation orders, and going to those areas where the conflict is carries a high degree of risk.
2 Lebanese journalists were killed yesterday working in the south. So the threat's incredibly high. And the IDF has said any cars driving south could be a target. And they do not make exceptions for journalists. And we know they don't make exceptions for medics because more than 100 medics, while working, have already been hit in the last 3 weeks of this war. What that means is there's an increasing amount of coverage happening from the balcony of hotels. Reading press releases, making phone calls, which is not the job of a foreign correspondent in wartime, and that worries me.
But if reporters like Leila can keep bearing witness to civilian deaths and destruction, will it make a difference? Will this shocking first-hand reporting galvanise the public and politicians, or bring justice if war crimes have been committed?
That's what I have to believe. That's how I keep going in this job. This is about what you believe in as moral principles. I believe in the moral principles of international law that we set up 80 years ago to stop the horrors of the Holocaust and other things that happened in the Second World War ever happening again, and everybody being held to account for those. War is war. Combatants are combatants. Civilians are civilians. Civilian spaces are civilian spaces. Ambulances are ambulances. Hospitals are hospitals. Schools are schools. And so if you can show that, as I have been doing every day, I think that matters.
It does matter, and it shows why it's important that journalists are allowed to report on this war from up close, so there can be no doubt about what is going on. And Leila, of course, is not alone. There are many other brave reporters, including several from the ABC, in the thick of it.
The book is called Cocaine Cassie, Setting the Record Straight. What do you want people to know about you?
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And convicted drug smuggler Cassie Sainsbury is back on our screens.
With a bombshell tell-all memoir.
And the media is keen to tell us she is
speaking out to set the record straight.
She wants to set the record straight.
Promising to set the record straight.
With Sainsbury now offering a new answer to the old question.
Cassie, why did you do it?
I was lured into it by somebody who I had completely opened myself up to. I'd been very vulnerable. And unfortunately, she used that to just destroy my life, essentially.
Yes, Cassie has a new sob story and a new villain to peddle to the hungry media.
You write that you were duped into drug trafficking by a woman that you loved and trusted whose name is Wendy, and you say that she's to blame for everything.
With the media letting Cassie blame Wendy from Adelaide for her failed attempt to smuggle 5.8 kilos of cocaine from Colombia.
She basically used my vulnerability of being in the closet to basically get me to be in love with her and just want to do anything to please her.
But when it comes to Cassie's many different stories, it's hard to know which to believe, as Liam Bartlett discovered 4 years ago on 60 Minutes.
Were you lying to me previously?
I wouldn't say that I was lying, but I wasn't giving you everything.
I just wonder if you have trouble remembering what's really true compared to which version you told me about prior.
And last week, the media had good reason to ask that again, because it's not just that Wendy has never been mentioned before, there were other red flags. Cassie's been telling the media for years about a handler in Australia called Joshua, who introduced her to running drugs in Sydney and then sent her to Colombia.
Her brothel bosses introduced her to a mystery man who offered her a role as a courier.
What's his name?
Joshua.
And in 2020, she was describing Joshua in vivid detail.
What does Joshua look like?
He was like tall but chubby, green eyes, brown hair.
But 2 years later, chubby, brown-haired Joshua was being described in a very different way on Seven's Spotlight.
Muscly, tanned, clear eyes.
Did he have tattoos, short hair, long hair?
He was bald.
Quite a big difference, you would think. And by last week, it had changed again, with chubby, brown-haired Joshua turned muscly, bald Joshua becoming Nick the handler, who was...
very well-dressed, businessman-like, actually.
With a British accent and...
lots of tattoos on his arms, snakes, dragons and foreign words.
And that is not all. Back in 2017, Cassie was talking of death threats from a man called Angelo, who, she was saying then, had set the whole thing up.
What exactly did this Angelo tell you?
Basically told me that if I didn't go through and do the job and take the package, that my mum, my sister and my partner, they would be killed.
But is there any mention of Angelo and his death threat in her tell-all memoir? No. Although there is a new bad guy called Carlos playing a similar role. And there's a number of other discrepancies in her story. Now, surely all these were key points for the media to take up. Yet all of them, and we counted a whopping 17 interviews across TV and radio last week, including 9, 7, 10, the ABC and Sky, failed to do so. Instead, we got soft questions about life in a Bogota jail.
It was horrible.
I bet it was, and I bet writing this book would have just been completely cathartic, and a lot of getting the truth straight is pretty important to you.
Along with plug after plug for the book.
Cassie's memoir, Cocaine Cassie, Setting the Record Straight, is out tomorrow.
Her tell-all book on sale from tomorrow.
It is an interesting read from all good bookstores.
Really? Did anyone actually read the book? I doubt it, and they certainly didn't do any homework before talking to her. But then these interviews weren't about truth, they were about ratings and celebrity, which is what has already seen criminal Cassie star on Seven's SAS Australia, and which has her hoping that her bombshell tell-all will scrub out her Cocaine Cassie moniker. Only problem?
So, given that's the title of the book, is that going to make the whole Cocaine Cassie thing even harder for you to shake in the future?
Good question. And it's a pity the media didn't ask more of them. Or better still, not have her on in the first place. But finally, let's come back home to the Sport of Kings and the biggest bet of the week.
Long may he reign! King's Royal Randwick visit, a big tip.
That front-page exclusive in the telly was built on a wing and a prayer, with claims inside that King Charles...
is a chance to make an appearance at Sydney's biggest race meeting.
And why was he a chance? Well, because he had nothing else on, as the journalist behind the story explained.
King Charles arrives on Friday at night and he has nothing planned for his itinerary on Saturday, leaving him open to do whatever he wants.
And that was enough to spark plenty of media hype.
A new Everest champion will be crowned, potentially in front of King Charles.
Plenty of speculation that perhaps the royal couple may make a cameo appearance.
A lot of talk now, is there? You know, when there's just a lot of smoke?
Yes.
It means there's fire, right?
And next day, Matt Shervington was asking ITV's royal editor if it was yay or nay.
Do we have any more information about him attending Everest?
People have asked me more questions about the races than anything else this week. You know, forget this whole debate about Republic and whether there should be a referendum. Let's talk about the races. My understanding is no.
But helping feed all the excitement was New South Wales racing boss Peter V'landys, who was confident the King would step up. After all, V'landys had honoured the King with a race in his own name, which was revealed last year in another telly exclusive, along with this marketing gem.
The trophy for the $5 million King Charles III Stakes is a replica of the monarch's own crown.
How could His Majesty say no? With V'landys telling the Today Show they had already lined up his favourite snack.
Look, we've bought a box of avocados to be on the safe side. As you know, he eats half an avocado for lunch.
And on race day, there was even a plea to the King to take a peek. I think that's a pun, on the front page of The Australian. So, did the King grace the race, crown the winner and eat an avocado? Well, no. But it didn't matter. The race was a sellout and the punters were all G'd up.
We are hoping that we might get to see King Charles and Queen Camilla.
Please, please. I want to sneak a cheeky photo of us together.
Oh, I'd probably kiss him on the lips, to be honest.
And the result of all this royal rubbish? The media spotlight was lighting up the Everest at the expense of Melbourne's Spring Carnival and the Caulfield Cup, which is why Peter V'landys created the race in the first place. You might call it a royal flush. And that's all from us for tonight. You can see a longer version of our interview with Leila Molana-Allen on our website. Don't forget Media Bites on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But for now, until next week, goodbye.